My fiancé, Liam, squeezed my hand under the table, his thumb rubbing slow, calming circles over my knuckles. He leaned in, his voice a low whisper against my ear, just for me. "Don't react yet," he murmured, his eyes fixed on my parents who were beaming across the restaurant table. "Just breathe. We'll talk about it later." But it was already too late. The bomb had been dropped. The pin pulled on a grenade I didn't even see coming. My mother had just casually mentioned it, tucked between a complaint about the restaurant's breadsticks and a glowing review of my brother's latest accomplishment. The new car, the shiny, brand-new, top-of-the-line SUV sitting in their driveway. And in that single, shattering moment, 4 years of sacrifice, of ramen noodle dinners and missed opportunities, all came crashing down around me. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. To understand why a car could feel like such a profound betrayal, you have to understand my family. I was, for lack of a better term, the designated adult. From the time I was about 10, I was the one who remembered birthdays, who made sure the bills were paid on time from my dad's scattered piles of mail, who mediated the constant, simmering arguments between my parents. My younger brother Kevin was the golden child. He could do no wrong. His C-average report cards were framed, while my straight A's were met with a distracted, "That's nice, honey." He got the new bike for Christmas. I got a savings bond that matured right around the time my parents needed to fix the water heater. It wasn't that they were overtly cruel. It was a far more insidious kind of neglect. I was the reliable one, the one who didn't need anything, the one who would always understand. It was like being the load-bearing wall of a house that was constantly under renovation. You're essential, but completely invisible until something starts to crumble. My role was to be the family's shock absorber, to soak up all the dysfunction and keep the peace. It was a quiet, thankless job, and for a long time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. It was just family. You do what you have to do. I learned to be self-sufficient, to not ask for much, to swallow my own needs because there was never enough time, money, or emotional energy to go around. My needs were always at the bottom of a very long, very chaotic list. And the biggest need, the one I had been quietly, diligently working towards since I was a freshman in high school, was college. It was my one shining beacon of escape. The college conversation, when it finally happened, was exactly as heartbreaking as I had subconsciously feared. I had my acceptance letters spread out on the dining room table, a mosaic of my future. I'd done everything right. I had a 4 GPA, a portfolio of extracurriculars a mile long, and I'd even landed a small scholarship. All I needed was their help to bridge the gap. I'd calculated it down to the dollar. I wasn't asking for a free ride, just a hand. My dad picked up the financial aid letter from my dream school, squinted at it, and let out a long, weary sigh. "Emily," he said, and the tone alone made my stomach clench. "We just don't have it." My mum chimed in, her voice dripping with practiced sympathy. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart, you know that. But things are tight. Your father's hours got cut, and with Kevin, well, you know." I did know. Kevin had just totaled his second car in as many years, an incident that was written off as bad luck and resulted in my parents co-signing a loan for a replacement. I looked from their faces, a carefully curated performance of parental regret, to my acceptance letters. The paper felt flimsy, the bold, congratulatory words suddenly mocking me. "What about the money you saved?" I asked, my voice small. "The college fund." My mother had the decency to look away. "We had to dip into that," she said vaguely. "For emergencies." The unspoken emergency, of course, was Kevin. It always was. They told me I was strong, that I was resourceful. They said they knew I would find a way. It was meant to be a compliment, but it felt like a punishment, a life sentence for being the responsible one. So, I did what I always did. I swallowed my disappointment, packed away my dreams, and found a way. Finding a way meant community college. It meant working 2, sometimes 3, part-time jobs. It meant my days started at 5 a.m. for the opening shift at a coffee shop and ended after midnight, reeking of fryer oil from a fast food joint. My life became a blur of textbooks, demanding customers, and exhaustion. I was a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. I'd see kids my age on campus, laughing, joining clubs, going to football games, and it felt like watching a movie of a life I was supposed to have. I was too tired to make friends, too busy to date. My one solace was Liam. We met in a statistics class, the only one I was taking that semester that genuinely interested me. He was quiet, observant, and had a way of looking at me that made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. He didn't just see the competent, reliable Emily. He saw the tired, frustrated, and deeply sad girl underneath. He was the first person to ever say to me, "That's not fair." It was such a simple phrase, but it was a revelation. He came from a big, loud, supportive family who argued over who got to pay for dinner. The first time I went to his house, his mum hugged me for a full minute and told me she was proud of me for working so hard. I almost burst into tears, right there in her entryway. Liam became my anchor in the storm of my family's dysfunction. He listened patiently to my stories, his brow furrowed in righteous anger on my behalf. He was the one who started pointing out the little inconsistencies, the subtle manipulations I had been conditioned to ignore. He was my catalyst. My parents, of course, loved Liam. Or rather, they loved the idea of him. He was stable, he had a good job as a junior architect, and he came from a good family. They saw him as a reflection of their own success, a testament to the daughter they had raised so well. They had no idea he was quietly deprogramming me from their years of gaslighting. The phone calls were a masterclass in their methods. They'd call me, usually when they needed something a ride to the airport, help setting up a new computer, a last-minute loan until payday. The conversations would always start the same way. "Hi, sweetie. How's our favourite daughter?" The feigned affection was the hook. Then came the litany of their problems, a carefully constructed narrative of woe designed to make me feel guilty. And it always ended with a reminder of how much they loved me, how they didn't know what they'd do without me. For years, it worked. I'd hang up the phone feeling a familiar cocktail of resentment, guilt, and obligation. But with Liam in my life, I started to see the strings. He'd watch me on these calls, my shoulders tensing, my voice getting smaller. When I'd hang up, he'd just look at me and say, "They didn't ask you a single question about your life, did they?" And he was always right. They never did. My life was an afterthought, a resource to be tapped when needed. My graduation from community college was a prime example. I'd finished my 2-year degree with honours. I sent them an invitation. They called the day before to say they couldn't make it. Kevin had a big soccer tournament. It was a recreational league. The years after community college were a slow, grueling climb. I transferred to a state university, living in a tiny, run-down apartment with 2 roommates and continuing my relentless work schedule. I was perpetually exhausted, but I was determined. I was going to get my degree. I was going to build a life for myself. A life that didn't involve being my family's perpetual safety net. Liam was my rock. He'd bring me dinner when he knew I was too tired to cook. He'd quiz me for exams, and he'd just sit with me in silence when the weight of it all felt too heavy. He proposed on the day I got my final grades, a 4 for the semester. He didn't get down on one knee in a fancy restaurant. He did it in our messy living room, surrounded by takeout containers and stacks of textbooks. He said he'd never met anyone stronger. And for the first time, when someone said I was strong, it felt like a real compliment, not an expectation. When I told my parents we were engaged, they were ecstatic. Not for me, really, but for the wedding. My mother immediately started talking about venues and guest lists. It was going to be a production, a show to prove what wonderful, successful parents they were. I tried to steer the conversation towards something small, something intimate, but it was like trying to stop a freight train with a feather. This wasn't about me and Liam. This was about them. They started making demands, insisting we invite distant relatives I hadn't seen in 20 years, vetoing my colour choices, and pushing for the most expensive catering options. It was their second chance at the wedding they never had. and I was just a prop. The financial contributions they offered for the wedding were, to put it mildly, a joke. They made a grand show of offering to pay for the flowers, a gesture they brought up in every conversation. "We're not like some parents," my mother would say, a pointed look in my direction. "We believe in helping our children. The flower budget they gave me wouldn't have covered the cost of the weeds in my backyard." It was another one of their performative gestures, designed to look good on the surface while being utterly hollow underneath. Liam, bless his heart, saw right through it. He quietly told me he'd cover the rest of the flower costs, and that we should just let them have their little moment of fake generosity. But it was the principle of the thing that gnawed at me. They could find money for this, for the appearance of being good parents, but not for my education, not for the one thing that would have fundamentally changed the course of my life. The resentment I had been suppressing for years began to bubble to the surface, hot and acidic. I started to pull back from them, keeping our conversations short and superficial. I stopped offering to help, stopped being their on-call crisis manager. The change was immediate. Their calls became more frequent, more demanding. They didn't understand why I was being so distant. They accused me of letting Liam turn me against them. It was classic gaslighting, twisting the situation to make me the villain, to make my newfound boundaries a betrayal. The stress was immense. Wedding planning, which was supposed to be a happy time, became a battleground. Every decision was a negotiation. Every conversation, a potential landmine. The breaking point came during what was supposed to be a celebratory dinner. We were a few months out from the wedding, and we were meeting my parents to finalize the guest list. The tension at the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. My mother was in rare form, complaining about the seating chart, questioning my choice of bridesmaid dresses, and generally treating me like her incompetent assistant. My dad was silent, as usual, offering no support. He was the king of passive agreement, his silence a tacit endorsement of my mother's every criticism. Then, in the middle of a rant about the cost of the centerpieces, she dropped it. "Well, at least we'll be able to drive to the wedding in comfort," she said with a smug little smile. "Your father finally traded in that old clunker. We got a new SUV. It's a beauty. Heated seats and everything." She said it so casually, so dismissively, as if she were talking about the weather. But the words hit me with the force of a physical blow. A new car. Not a used car. Not a sensible sedan. A brand new, top-of-the-line SUV. The kind of car that costs more than a year of tuition at my dream school. The kind of car you buy when things aren't tight. The kind of car you buy when you haven't been feeding your daughter a line of manipulative lies for the past 4 years. I felt the blood drain from my face. I could hear a roaring in my ears. All the air seemed to have been sucked out of the room. I looked at my dad, who was suddenly fascinated by a spot on his water glass. I looked at my mom, who was still smiling, completely oblivious to the devastation she had just caused. And that's when Liam's hand found mine under the table. That's when he whispered in my ear. But his warning was a second too late. The carefully constructed dam of my composure had already broken. I don't remember making a conscious decision to speak. The words just came out, cold and sharp. "A new car?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. My mother's smile faltered. "Yes, sweetie. A lovely dark blue one. We got a great deal." "A great deal," I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you." The sarcasm was thick, dripping from every syllable. Liam squeezed my hand harder, a silent plea to stop. But I couldn't. 4 years of biting my tongue, of swallowing my anger, of accepting their excuses, it was all coming out. "It must be nice," I continued, my eyes locked on my father's, daring him to look at me. "To be able to afford a new car. Things must be looking up. I guess your hours didn't get cut after all, Dad." My father flinched as if I'd slapped him. My mother's face, which had been a mask of pleasantries, was now hardening into its more familiar expression of indignant fury. "Now, Emily, there's no need to take that tone," she snapped. "Tone?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "What tone is that, Mom?" The tone of a daughter who worked 3 jobs to put herself through college because her parents just didn't have it. The tone of a daughter who lived on instant noodles so you could co-sign a loan for her brother's third car. Is that the tone you mean? The restaurant, which had been a low hum of conversation, seemed to go silent. I could feel the eyes of the other diners on us. For the first time in my life, I didn't care about keeping the peace. I wanted to burn it all to the ground. "You are being dramatic," my mother hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You have no idea what our financial situation is. We have had a lot of unexpected expenses." "Like a new SUV?" I shot back. Was that an unexpected expense? Or was it just more important than my education? More important than the one thing I ever asked you for? I finally looked at Liam. His face was a mixture of shock and unwavering support. He gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. He was with me. That was all I needed. I pushed my chair back from the table, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. "You know what? I don't think I can do this anymore." I looked at my parents, at their faces contorted with anger and defensiveness. There was no remorse, no understanding, just the same old entitled indignation. They were the victims here, in their minds. I was the ungrateful child, throwing a tantrum. "We're done," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "The wedding, all of it, we're done," my mother gasped, clutching her pearls in a perfect imitation of a scandalized soap opera star. "You can't be serious," she sputtered. "After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" I was incredulous. "You did nothing for me. You exploited me. You used my sense of responsibility as a weapon against me. You told me you were poor while you were buying new cars. You are liars." I took the napkin from my lap and placed it on the table. "Liam and I will be planning our own wedding, a small one. You will not be invited." With that, I turned and walked away, Liam right behind me. I didn't look back. I could feel their stunned, furious silence boring into my back. But for the first time, it didn't have any power over me. The strings had been cut. The walk to the car was a blur. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding, but underneath the adrenaline, there was a strange, exhilarating sense of lightness. It was the feeling of a massive weight being lifted from my shoulders, a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. As soon as we were in the car, I burst into tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of rage and relief. Liam just held me, letting me sob it all out. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't offer solutions. He just held me and let me feel everything I had been suppressing for a decade. When the tears finally subsided, he pushed my hair back from my face and said, "I am so incredibly proud of you." The fallout was as swift and predictable as I expected. My phone started blowing up before we even got home. Voicemails from my mother, alternating between screaming rage and saccharine, manipulative pleading. Texts from my dad, telling me I had broken my mother's heart and that I needed to apologize. Then came the flying monkeys. My aunt, my uncle, even a few of my parents' friends, all calling to tell me I was being selfish and cruel. They all had the same script, the same talking points. It was a coordinated campaign of guilt and shame. But something inside me had fundamentally shifted. Their words, which once would have sent me into a spiral of self-doubt, now sounded hollow and absurd. I saw the manipulation for what it was. I saw them for who they were. With Liam's support, I blocked their numbers. All of them. The silence was deafening at first, then it was peaceful. My brother Kevin was the last to reach out. He sent me a text a week later. "Mum and Dad are a mess. You really did a number on them. You need to fix this." There was no concern for me, no curiosity about my side of the story. Just a command. I was, once again, being tasked with managing our parents' emotions. I stared at the text for a long time, then I typed out a reply. No. It was the most powerful word I had ever written. I blocked his number too. The next few months were a strange mix of grief and liberation. I was mourning the family I wished I had, the parents I deserved, but I was also celebrating my freedom. Liam and I started planning our real wedding. We booked a small, beautiful restaurant with a garden patio. Our guest list had 30 names on it, all people who genuinely loved and supported us. My mother-in-law-to-be, a woman who had shown me more maternal affection in 2 years than my own mother had in 28, took me dress shopping. She cried when I found the one. They were happy tears. It was a feeling I wasn't used to. We paid for everything ourselves. It wasn't extravagant, but it was ours. Every choice, every detail, was a reflection of us, not a performance for my parents' friends. There was no drama, no manipulation, no guilt, just joy. It was a revolutionary concept. The wedding day was perfect. It was a sunny afternoon, the garden was in full bloom, and I was surrounded by love. Real, unconditional love. As I stood there, holding Liam's hands, saying my vows, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had done it. I had built a life for myself, a family of my own, based on trust and respect. I had broken the cycle. After the wedding, we moved to a new city for Liam's job. The physical distance was just as important as the emotional distance. It gave me space to heal, to redefine myself outside of the role my family had assigned me. I started going to therapy, unpacking years of emotional baggage. I learned about terms like gaslighting and narcissistic abuse. Having a name for their behavior was validating. It proved I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive or dramatic. I was a victim of sustained emotional manipulation. And I had survived. I had gotten out. I started to rediscover the person I was before I became the family caretaker. I took up painting, a hobby I'd abandoned in high school because I didn't have the time. I joined a book club. I made friends, real friends, who liked me for me, not for what I could do for them. I was finally, for the first time in my life, living for myself. About a year after the wedding, I received a letter. It was from my mother. My address was unlisted, so she must have gotten it from a relative. My first instinct was to throw it away, to not let her poison my new peaceful life. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened it, my hand steady. The letter was a masterpiece of non-apology. It was full of phrases like, "I'm sorry you feel that way," and "It was never our intention to hurt you." She talked about how lonely they were, how much they missed me, how Kevin never came to visit. She painted a picture of 2 sad, abandoned parents who had only ever done their best. She never once mentioned the car. She never once acknowledged the years of lies. She never once took responsibility for her actions. It was all about her feelings, her pain. She ended the letter by saying she hoped I would find it in my heart to forgive them. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it neatly and put it in the shredder. Forgiveness is a tricky thing. I had forgiven them in my own way. I had forgiven them enough to let go of the anger, to stop letting their memory consume me. But forgiveness did not mean reconciliation. Forgiveness did not mean letting them back into my life to hurt me again. My peace was too hard won, too precious to risk. I owed them nothing. My only obligation was to myself, to the life I had built, to the family I had chosen. Life continued, quiet and beautiful. Liam and I bought a small house with a yard for a dog we planned to adopt. I got a job in my field, working as a graphic designer. It wasn't a high-powered, 6-figure career, but I loved it. I was creative, I was respected, and I was happy. My relationship with my in-laws blossomed. They became the family I had always craved. We had Sunday dinners, we went on vacations together, we celebrated holidays with genuine warmth and affection. They showed me what a healthy family looked like, and it was a gift beyond measure. Every now and then, a thought of my parents would surface. A song on the radio, a particular brand of coffee in the supermarket. It used to be a jolt of pain. Now, it was just a faint echo, a scar from a wound that had long since healed. I realized that my anger had been replaced by a kind of sad pity. They were 2 deeply unhappy people, trapped in a cycle of their own making. They had sacrificed their daughter's love and respect for a new car, for the appearance of success. It was a terrible bargain, and they were the ones who had to live with it. I had moved on. I had won. My victory wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. It was about building a life so full of love and joy that their toxicity couldn't touch it. One afternoon, I was cleaning out an old box of college memorabilia, and I found it. The financial aid letter from my dream school. The one my dad had looked at with such performative sadness. I held the paper in my hands. The numbers that had once seemed so insurmountable now looking so small. I thought about the 4 years of my life I had lost, the experiences I had missed, the exhaustion that had been my constant companion. I thought about the lies, the manipulation, the sheer, breathtaking selfishness of it all. And for a moment, I felt a flicker of the old anger. But then I looked around my sun-drenched living room, at the pictures on the wall of me and Liam, of our friends, of his wonderful family. I looked at the half-finished painting on my easel, the stack of library books on the coffee table. I heard the sound of Liam whistling in the kitchen as he made us lunch. And the anger faded, replaced by a wave of profound gratitude. The path had been harder, longer, and lonelier than it should have been. But I had walked it, and it had led me here, to this life, to this happiness. Maybe, in a strange, twisted way, they had given me a gift. They had taught me to be strong, not in the way they meant it, but in a way that truly mattered. They had taught me to be resilient. They had taught me to fight for myself. They had shown me exactly what I didn't want, and in doing so, they had cleared the path for me to find everything I ever needed. The final, unexpected chapter of this story came about 2 years after I'd received that letter. It arrived in the form of a Facebook message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to since before the wedding. It was a tentative, apologetic message. She said she was sorry for how she had acted, that she had been fed a one-sided story by my parents, and that she had recently learned the truth. Apparently, my parents' carefully constructed world had started to unravel. Kevin, the golden child, had finally pushed them too far. He had gotten into some serious financial trouble, something involving gambling debts, and had expected them to bail him out, as they always did. But this time, the well was dry. The new SUV had been the start of a spending spree, a desperate attempt to project an image of wealth they didn't have. They had taken out a second mortgage on their house. They were drowning in debt. When they told Kevin they couldn't help him, he had exploded. In his rage, he had thrown everything in their faces, all the times they had bailed him out, all the money they had given him, all the sacrifices they had made for him. And then, the kicker. He had screamed at them, "You spent all that money on yourselves and on me, and you couldn't even help Emily with college." According to my cousin, the fight had been epic, the talk of the extended family. The truth was finally out. Not from me, but from the one person they had sacrificed everything for. The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. My cousin told me that my parents were devastated, not just by the financial ruin, but by the public humiliation. Their perfect family image was shattered. Their golden child had turned on them. They were isolated, with even their most loyal supporters now looking at them with pity and a touch of scorn. She said my mother had asked her if she thought I would be willing to talk to them. I felt a strange sense of detachment as I read her words. There was no triumph, no surge of vindication, just a quiet, sad finality. Their downfall had nothing to do with me. It was the inevitable consequence of their own choices. They had built their house on a foundation of lies and favoritism, and it had finally collapsed on top of them. I typed a polite, carefully worded message back to my cousin. I told her I appreciated her reaching out and that I was sorry to hear the family was going through a difficult time. I told her I wished them the best. But I did not offer to call. I did not offer to help. I did not offer a path to reconciliation. The door was closed. I had locked it myself, and I had no intention of ever opening it again. My life was here, in my sunny house, with my loving husband, my future bright and unburdened by their chaos. Their drama was their own to manage. I was no longer the designated adult. I was just me, and it was more than enough. Looking back, the new car wasn't really about the money. It was about the lie. It was the physical proof of the narrative they had been spinning for years. The story of the poor, struggling parents who just couldn't afford to help their responsible, understanding daughter. It was a monument to their selfishness. They didn't just deny me financial support. They denied me the truth. They actively chose to let me struggle, to sacrifice my youth and my opportunities, so they could maintain their lifestyle and continue to enable my brother. They chose a depreciating asset over an investment in my future. They chose their own comfort over my dreams, and that is a betrayal that goes far beyond dollars and cents. It's a fundamental breaking of the parental contract. Your job as a parent is to protect your children, to support them, to give them the tools they need to succeed. My parents did the opposite. They saw my strength and my independence not as qualities to be nurtured, but as resources to be exploited. They used my competence as an excuse to abdicate their own responsibilities. It was easier to tell me I would find a way than to make the hard choices, to set boundaries with my brother, to live within their means. It was the path of least resistance, and it came at my expense. The car was just the final, undeniable piece of evidence in a case that had been building for years. The most liberating part of this whole journey has been the realization that I am not responsible for their happiness. For so long, I believed that it was my job to keep them stable, to manage their emotions, to maintain the fragile peace of our family. I walked on eggshells. I swallowed my feelings. I put their needs before my own. I thought that was what it meant to be a good daughter, but it's not. A healthy relationship, with a parent or anyone else, is a two-way street. It's built on mutual respect, honesty, and support. What we had wasn't a family. It was a hostage situation, where I was the only one who didn't know the doors were unlocked. Stepping away was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but it was also the most necessary. It allowed me to see that I could not only survive without them, but I could thrive. I could build a life for myself that was peaceful, joyful, and authentic. I could create my own family, a family of choice, built on a foundation of love and trust. And I did. My life now is everything I ever dreamed of. And it's a life I built myself, not just without their help, but in spite of their hindrance. The peace I feel now is a testament to the power of setting boundaries, of choosing yourself, of walking away from a situation that is designed to break you. My parents are still out there, living in the wreckage of the world they created. I hear snippets of information from my cousin from time to time. They sold the house. They are renting a small apartment. Kevin is in and out of their lives, a constant source of drama and disappointment. It sounds bleak, and a younger version of me would have been consumed with guilt, with a desperate need to rush in and fix it all. But I am no longer that person. Their life is the result of their choices, just as my life is the result of mine. I chose to walk away from the fire. They chose to stay and get burned. I have my own garden to tend to now, my own life to nurture, and it is flourishing. The anger is gone, replaced by a calm, quiet strength. The hurt has faded, leaving behind the wisdom of a hard-learned lesson. I am free. So, I'll ask you, the person who has listened to my story, who has followed me on this journey from heartbreak to healing, did I do the right thing? Was cutting them off completely a step too far, or was it the only way to truly save myself? Let me know what you think.